Hello everyone and welcome to episode 23 of the Six Sided Podcast. I'm your host, the Taxman, and I just want to kick this episode off this week with a special thank you to everybody who's been subscribing to the YouTube page lately. That's really been blowing up. We're getting close to 300 viewers. Pretty impressive considering I was at 50 or so a few weeks ago, so that's been awesome. Thanks everybody who's subscribed up to this point. And as for our new ones that I got to give a mention to, a quick shout out to Cesspool, Hendrik Bothma, Disney World Adventures, and Jonah Gaming. Once again, if you subscribe to the YouTube page, I give you a shout out on the next available show. Please keep in mind that if you subscribe to the page and your subscriber profile, I think is what it is set to private, then I don't know that you've actually subscribed to the channel, so I can't give you a shout out. Obviously, there's been a few more than that have subscribed this past week. Like I said, unfortunately, I don't know who you are, so I can't give you a shout-out. But if you let me know, drop me a line, I'll be sure to give you a plug on the next upcoming program. So speaking of blowing up, our Twitter page, at 6_podcast, we're well over 3,000 now, which is pretty incredible. Once again, just thank you, everybody, for following us on Twitter. There's been a ton of people who have really been putting us over on there lately, and I'm going to get to them at the tail end of this show, so keep it locked for that. Now, as for this week's episode, I'm joined by a very special guest. A lot of you probably know him, Robert from Robert Does Wrestling, one of my cohorts over at WrestlingWithWrestling.com. And by the way, if you haven't checked that site out lately, once again, www.wrestlingwithwrestling.com. Andre Corbeil's been slaying it lately, and make sure you go on the site and check out his, shall we say, unique proposal that Scarlett Bordeaux very much enjoyed on the last Impact teleconference. You won't be disappointed, and everybody loves a good cameo from the Smoke Show, so who could say no? WrestlingWithWrestling.com, definitely want to check that out. But I'm going to throw it right now to my chat with Robert, because I have a feeling that this one's going to be in-depth. This dude is super intelligent, much like Mike from last week. Once again, shout out to Mike Larkin for joining me last week. Robert is another one of these guys who just is a goddamn encyclopedia of wrestling knowledge, and especially with the Latino wrestling community. More specifically, he's from Puerto Rico, if any of you didn't know. I had done a live cast on Robert's show a few months ago at this point, and I think we did about an hour and change on his show, and then I swear we talked for like 2 or 3 hours just wrestling in the Latino scene, specifically, like I said, wrestling in the Puerto Rico area, and who are the big names there, what goes on there. It was so eye-opening for me, and like I said, we're like 3 hours after the broadcast was done and we're still chatting, and I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go to work in a couple hours. So tremendous. Anyways, I digress a little bit. I've wanted to get Robert on for a long time, finally able to pin him down, and I'm going to throw it right now to my chat with Robert from Robert Does Wrestling. So I'm finally been able to pin down, as you will, Robert from Robert Does Wrestling to join the show. Robert, how the hell are you?
We're doing the second show, the first time on your podcast. So thanks for having me, Taxman. This is gonna be a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun on the first time you did my show back in a couple of months, so I expect this to be a lot of fun. So thanks for having me. Go ahead.
Of course, you don't know it, but on the intro to this, I did allude to that, and I threw a couple of interesting tidbits on there, but yeah, like, doing that live cast was awesome, and it's funny because I've, like, for a few weeks now, I'm like, oh, I gotta get Robert on, and then, like, I've only been able to tape on a Thursday, and then I know you always have you almost always have your show on a Thursday, and I'm like, fuck, I can't get him, like, because he's doing his own thing. I didn't want to bother you, but this time it finally worked out. kids are sleeping, wife's out, so call up Robert. Robert, you want to do this? He's all in, so let's do it.
Is the rumor truth that you are able to get your kids to sleep by putting some other wrestling promotion? Is that true, Taxman?
I'm not.
Shoot hard on that. Yeah.
I'm not saying that I read them the results from Raw and it put them out cold. I am saying, though, that to make sure that they stay asleep at 2 a.m., I've got the results of SmackDown ready to go. So, yeah, it's good for something at least. I don't watch it, but it's good for something at least.
Yeah.
Alright, so as usual, we are going to run down the matches from this week's episode of Impact Wrestling, and there's been a few, we'll say, interesting tidbits of information, newsworthy information, if you will, that have come out this week that I want to hit Robert with. He has no idea. We didn't discuss this pre-show. I wanted to get Robert on the fly, because if anybody can go in-depth and cut a scathing promo on something, it's Robert. So we'll get there, but first we'll cover the matches from this week of Impact Wrestling. So after the show opening, we had a little in-ring segment with the new heel faction, we'll call them because they're unnamed right now, Aries, Money Moose, and Killer Cross. We have eventually have KM and Falaba come out. There's a whole, kind of a cluster F of things happening in the ring. Everybody's kind of, I don't know. It was a weird way to start the show, I thought, but it ends up being that Falaba is going to challenge Austin Aries at the end of the show for the Impact World title. So that's kind of how the show started. It was an odd open for myself, but the first match that we end up having is the Lucha Brothers. That's Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix, who, by the way, are not going to WWE. That was crushed earlier this week, but maybe we'll talk about that later. Versus the Cult of Lee. That's Trevor Lee and Caleb Conley. So I don't know about yourself, Robert, but I thought that this was a pretty good match. My only criticism, well, yeah, it is. My only criticism is the Cult of Lee ever going to get a fucking win ever again, or what?
Yeah, I get where you're going for. The guys are able to put up a match with, a solid match with anyone that you put them against with. So I think it might be time to give them some love. I
love that. I don't know if you caught it or not, but they did the Cult of Lee had, I can't remember if it was Phoenix or it was Pentagon, in the electric chair position and did the double foot stomp off the top rope.
Yes.
Bro, that was insane. I was like, holy shit. I had to rewind it and watch it again. Like, that was killer.
Yeah, and a very sweet spot, very, it looked good, but it was, safe at the same time. Very well executed by this guy, Trevor Lee.
He's
the guy who did, yeah.
He's an incredible talent. I can't say enough about him. Like I said, I wish that they would have got the win here. I understand why they didn't, and we'll get into that in a second. We end up having the Lucha Brothers get the win. Phoenix does the top rope double foot spike onto Trevor Lee into the Fear Factor piledriver from Pentagon. One of the moves that you will never see in WWE, by the way, because they banned that one, the spike piledriver. But anyways, so the Lucha Brothers get the win and the victory. Afterwards, we have OVE have a little camera time on the big screen, and they essentially challenge the Lucha Brothers and the Machine Brian Cage to a match at Bound for Glory. So that would be now our second announced match for Bound for Glory following last week's, we'll say, interesting reveal of Aries and Mr. Johnny Impact for the world title. So I just want to get your thoughts real quick. What do you think about the combination of the Lucha Brothers and Brian Cage as a threesome?
Yeah. It is obviously a very a trio that is gonna get over as hell at the tapings in Mexico, because the Lucha Bros are very over there.
Yeah, you
Brian
could say
Cage
that.
Also, yeah, is very over there. So they did a very good pairing by pairing these three versus OVE, who are gonna play the part of being the bad guys. So, I'm looking forward for that match at Bound for Glory. So let's see what is gonna happen at this set of statements.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just a side note, I was really impressed finally that this set of tapings, I saw almost nothing for spoilers on Twitter. I'm not sure about yourself, but like compared to even the Toronto ones, like I saw almost nothing, which was such a nice treat. Except for I saw a bunch of pictures of how the crowd looked, and bro, it looked fucking bananas there.
Yeah, obviously, since I speak Spanish, I saw the spoilers because they were all over the Spanish-speaking, wrestling dirt sheets. But it is good not seeing them also on the American English style dirt sheets.
Yeah.
So, by the way, they also recorded the most important stuff like backstage. So even if you get to read the spoilers, you're not gonna get the full picture.
Yeah,
so they did that thing smart, not like the Tessa Blanchard, title change.
Yeah, that was terrible. Like, I understand they had to put it out there because they wanted to get ahead of TMZ, but, like, that whole situation was just shitty.
Yeah. Or do it on a Twitch special or something along those lines. It is like, okay, we already know what happened, and obviously it's not the same thing reading it than watch. I think there's another ways to do things, and with social media, you can get very creative and avoid all of that cycle of getting the news out before you're actually showing them on TV.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate part about tapings, but yeah, I'm glad that a lot of the backstage stuff has been kept secret, so even if you were at the tapings, you still don't even have the full story, so it gives you more incentive to tune in and still catch the program, regardless of knowing what's happened in ring or not.
That's one of the very select few things that I did like about the Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan regime, right? They used to record a lot of stuff backstage, and even if you went to the tapings, you have to see the show when it aired because you won't get the full picture. The only thing that they actually did wrong is that they recorded stuff out of order. So that's why you did see the crowd being a little weird during that time. It was because of that, because it was not something from point A to point B.
Yeah, they were throwing in G, F, and Z anywhere. That's kind of that was their way to beat the spoilers, but at the same time, but it then it looks weird because you'll have one match with a hot crowd and one match with like nothing or nobody there or whatever. So yeah, it was odd. I understand the logic behind it, but yeah, it was an odd way to do it.
Yeah.
So our second match of the card tonight was, well, you could call it a match because it was technically, the bell rang, so it was Alicia versus Katrina. Really, this thing was just to further the Joe Henry, Grado, and Katrina kind of love triangle, but it's not really because it's platonic love after all. Alicia gets a quick roll up for the I think it was like honestly about 4 or 5 seconds this whole match. What did you think of the Joe Henry access denied video?
You know who they remind me? You remember like the punk rock band New Found Glory, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that they have like a song that it was like My Friends Over You?
Yeah.
It is kind of that same type of logic over there. It kind of caught me off guard, the reference to the incest angle done by the geniuses over there at Stamford, Connecticut. So that kind of caught me off guard, so it made me laugh. I was not expecting that. How about you, Taxman?
It's funny you mentioned that because I was in the middle of having dinner, and that scene came, and that specific part came on, and I almost spit my food out because I was like, "What?" And then the live crowd, like you could tell, like half of them were like, "What the fuck?" Right? Because they're like, "Oh, did they just say that?" Like it was so good. Just the more that I see of Joe Hendry, he's just such a phenomenal showman. Like he's one of these guys that I feel like the more you give him creative leeway, just the more that he's going to be just knocking it out of the park. Like every single time this guy gets a segment, it's a banger for myself.
He's gonna get even more over when time passes by. He's kind of, if I would say this without people getting offended, he's very 90s. So that those type of Titantrons videos were very popular during the late 90s, early 2000, and in the core impact audience, it comes from that era of time. So the more he does that type of stuff, the more over he will get.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's reestablishing that connection, and he's got it, man, like in spades. So yeah, looking forward to where he goes from here. In our third match of the night, we had our tag team champs LAX with Conan, I should add, because that's a little bit important towards the end of this, versus the Fraternity. Now, I've never seen these guys before. I'm not sure about yourself. I was a little bit surprised that they got as much offense in on LAX as they did, but we ended up having LAX win the match with, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was like a swinging neckbreaker powerbomb combination.
Yeah, that the street sweeper, that is Buff. What was the finisher of Buff Bagwell? Like the Buff Buster?
Something like that. But this, yeah, or maybe I didn't catch it properly, but this to me, like, it didn't look like their usual street sweeper. To me, this, or maybe it was the way it was filmed or something, but somehow this looked different to me, or maybe it was me and I just watched it weird, but
it was from an angle. It was not like a straight up.
Okay, that's what it was. Because yeah, I seen it and I'm like, that was different. And then on commentary they said something weird, and I'm like, maybe that was something different. But anyways, I stand corrected, of course. What did you think of the OGs coming out at the end trying to goad Conan into throwing the first punch?
Yeah, that was good. Especially Keen. He's one of the Oscar winners when it comes down to this feud, and the inflammatory term and the inflammatory statement by saying, hey, the only thing that I am not that proud of is that I didn't finish in killing that kid that I run over.
Yeah.
So obviously you're gonna get a lot of reaction from Conan and the people over there. And I'm not gonna be spoiling stuff for people, but tune in to next week of Impact Wrestling, and they take it to another level during the tapings. So be on the lookout for that angle. It have been great. This angle have been awesome, and I expect them to have a solid match at Bound for Glory. How about you, Taxman?
I've loved this. This whole angle has been just like one twist after another. Like you can't. This is one of those angles where you can't sit here and just predict week after week what's going to happen, right? Like sometimes you kind of fall into this, okay, this guy's winning this week, then you know that the other guy's going to win the other week, and then they're going to go 50-50 for a while, and then there's never really anything that's, we'll say, groundbreaking or really spectacular that happens, except at a pay-per-view. Now what you're seeing with the LAX and OG's feud is like, they'll go a week of not even being on TV at all. And then the next week they are, but it's something like super meaningful, like the kid getting hit. Or like last week with the announcement that they're going to have the match to quote-unquote end all matches essentially at Bound for Glory. And then this week is like just fireworks in the ring, but it's different avenues and different ways of presenting it. Like, one's a backstage product, right? A few weeks ago, you'll remember that they had the backstage brawl. That's a different way to present this. Now this week it's in-ring. Just like the way that they keep this feud fresh and just moving in so many different directions is honestly, like, this is some of the best shit that I've seen in God knows how long in wrestling, in terms of keeping an angle, keeping people invested in that angle, and keeping it fresh.
Yeah, they have. It is like anything. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. So you need to get creative on things, and they have been, getting their creative uses with this angle and doing different stuff every single week. It is not like LAX versus the OGs wrestling every single week. No, they change stuff a little bit and keep things fresh. That is one of the advantage of Impact Wrestling, that they don't overdone stuff till death.
Yeah, it would be so, how should I put it? It'd be such a letdown to the guys if it was just every week it was LAX versus the OGs in a flat match, and then, by week 4 nobody gives a fuck. Right?
No,
And, like, I'm so glad that that's not the case, but, like, on other programs that would be exactly what's happening. So for everybody who, hasn't given Impact a chance, and I'll be quite frank, I don't know why you wouldn't at this point, considering what's out there for other programming, but when you talk about, people are always complaining about, Company A doesn't know how to write a proper story, or they don't have coherent storylines or whatever. If you want to see how an angle can be worked properly, done over a long period of time, but still remain relevant and fresh, like, you have no better angle or idea or storyline to look at than this LAX and OG's angle, and it's just, everything about it has been fantastic.
I think the way the how can I explain this, the rationale, right, the logic why people won't give Impact a chance, it may have to do with star power. I was watching Slammiversary with the bassist of my former band, right? And we were having a couple of adult beverage and stuff like that, and I have a couple of friends also over here. He's not that big of a fan in general, right? He's one of those guys that he knows the people, the big guys from wrestling, but he doesn't know every single detail or anything like that. And that was one of the things he was saying to me, like, yo, this show was good, but they need some stars. They need like someone that could translate into legit star power, and that is a question for basically another day. What would you do with that? Will you buy them, or will you build them? The way Dixie used to do was buy them. It's like when you buy Uber fast car or anything like that. You could either buy them or build them. I think the other way around should be the way they should go. Who they can build into a massive star, I don't have the answer. I don't work with them, but I think that should be the next step into getting Impact Wrestling back into the mainstream, like the good old days. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think Impact Wrestling lack major star power, or do you see it in other way?
To me, I don't think that they lack star power. They do in terms of a big name, like they do. I'm kind of fumbling my words here a little bit, but they don't have, and this is going to be so whatever, but Stone Cold, right? Or they don't have The Rock, but neither does the other show. But what happens is they're so associated and ingrained with it that it's just like people just know, right? Whereas like with Impact, it's just okay, who's on Impact? And then you list off whoever you want to list off, and there's not that same level of recognition because it's not Stone Cold, or it's not Hogan, or it's not The Rock. I'm very leery about them buying star power because I don't think that it's conducive to what they're doing right now. And actually, we're going to touch on this later on in the program. You don't know it yet, Robert, but we're going to touch on this later. But to me, what they're doing now will build them stars. They're probably 2 years out, but they're on the right path and trajectory to build a star. Rather than, okay, we can pay a lot of money to bring in El Patron, for example. We all know how that worked out. But why? Why would you? Actually, I'm gonna stop that thought right now because this is something I want to dig into a little bit later because that's part of the news that came out this week. So we are gonna get to that right away. So I know you got a little bit more to say, but I'm gonna cut myself off a little bit short, and I'm gonna dig into this one real good later.
That's the teaser at the middle of the podcast, right?
Yeah. We got to leave him something for the end, eh? We'll give him all the fireworks at the start. Fuck it. All right. So our next match on the card was X Division non-title match. We had Brian Cage versus Congo Kong. Good to see Congo Kong in the ring again because I don't think he's had a match in 4. Actually, come to think of it, I don't think he's had a match since the last time these two had a match. Maybe I'm wrong, but...
Yeah. He haven't wrestled on Impact ever since he wrestled, Brian Cage. By the way, the spot that Congo Kong did, like running in the what is the name of that? Like the ramp?
Yeah.
And jumping over the third rope into a plancha on Brian Cage was very, very impressive.
That was so good.
Yeah.
And I love to, I love Congo Kong as I love everything about him, his character, what he does. I think the guy's phenomenal. But when he sold that clothesline lariat, or the discus lariat, holy shit! And he fucking does the double flip. I'm like, holy fuck! That's so impressive.
Yeah, Congo Kong. When you see him, he's very deceitful. When you see that tall guy having a weird shaped body and stuff, you think, oh, he's just another big guy, slow guy. Don't get it twisted. Congo Kong is able to wrestle quite good and quite safe at the end of the day. I haven't heard anybody actually getting injured by him. So he got raw look, but he's able to put the new style of more flippy stuff into his arsenal. He's very underappreciated at the end of the day. I like seeing him a lot on wrestling, and even when I was working on a indie promotion over here, I was pushing for getting him. I was saying to the big boss, hey, do you want to impress people? You want to get a baby face over? Contact Congo Kong, have him wrestle for a month here, and then put him versus the baby face and get Congo Kong to put him over, and you will see how things follow, because Congo Kong is very impressive, and also he have that raw look. And if you know a little bit about pro wrestling here in Puerto Rico, you know that Abdullah the Butcher was very over. He was the second most over person in the island, the first one being Carlos Colon. So he got that look, that raw look going on. So he's gonna get $1 million on the island. But I don't want to get sidetracked on that. Keep talking about this awesome match, Taxman.
For me, this was, and I'm going to say too, Congo Kong has that international flavor. You know what I mean? Like you just said, he can translate in Puerto Rico, but you also, he could very easily translate in Japan. Because you look at a guy like Bad Luck Fale, right? Similar build, looks totally different than everybody else out there, but guys like that can translate so well into the international market. And really, that's what they're trying to do as a whole in this company, is really build that international footprint. Using guys like him as a way to go that look different. But you can look at him and know, like, okay, this guy can go, right?
Yeah, and also on India, if you notice, if you see like the comments from the videos of Impact Wrestling that Congo Kong is on, you see a lot of comments that comes from the India fans. So obviously he's that type of talent that also translate really good when it comes down to something international like India. And hopefully they'll do the second tour in the near future. And I would love to see Congo Kong over there.
Yeah, I have to agree.
Yeah.
So in this match, we end up having Brian Cage win the match. He actually wins it with an F5, which is, again, pretty impressive considering Congo Kong's size. After the match, we have the first time that Brian Cage grabs a mic in the ring and essentially accepts the challenge laid out by OVE to join the aforementioned Lucha Brothers in that six-man tag match that they're going to have at Bound for Glory. So this show is just a whole lot of storytelling throughout the show. This is just adding another layer heading into Bound for Glory. So speaking of storytelling, we have our last match of the night. We have Austin Aries defending the Impact World title versus the lovable Fallah Bahh. Once again, storytelling, something that happened at the beginning of the episode, following it up at the end. Who would have ever thought that you could tell an actual story in one fluid motion in a wrestling show? I know it's mind-boggling for some of you, but for a lot of us in Impact lately, this has been par for the course, and it's so nice to see. But I really enjoyed this match, and I enjoy watching Fallah Bahh, and I really liked how they were able to show him as a actual competitive threat. Yes, he did a little bit of the comedy stuff in this match, but to me, like, he shows that he can just go out there and work a great match. And I know everybody, or not everybody, but there's this certain amount of people don't really like Austin Aries as champion. I'm not going to really get into that, but at least in this match, it shows his versatility that he can go with a really large athlete. And I thought these two just had a great match.
Yeah, that's by the way, that's something that Let me rephrase myself. Popular undercard guy like Fallah Bahh, you will never see that type of wrestler over the other side of town headlining Monday Night Raw. That is something totally new when it comes down to American professional wrestling. Having just a popular lower card talent, being pushed into getting a title shot versus the champion and having like the backstage people and the people on the back sharing him and pulling for him. That is totally something new because they obviously that have been done already on wrestling, right? But instead of doing the traditional way, they did it like segment by segment by segment by segment, building it piece by piece into obviously the main event of the evening. And that was fun. And Fallah Bahh is a fun performer at the end of the day, and that is what you want people to get out of Impact Wrestling. That Impact Wrestling is a fun promotion. And Austin Aries is a very, very solid worker. I know there's some people that don't agree with him being the champion, and I get it, especially during the opening. And I think we should talk about that a little bit later on. Austin Aries is an excellent talent, but, obviously, if you pair him up with Moose and with Killer Cross, you kind of cutting him at the knee. Why? Because he's quite small, and you're putting him next to
with some
biggest,
huge guys.
Yeah, and obviously, wrestling is also about perception, and perception is reality. But at the end of the day, Austin Aries is an amazing talent, and what you can put him with anyone on that roster, and Austin Aries is able to get a good match out of that person.
So, as you may have figured out, obviously, because we talked about it earlier, the Bound for Glory match, Austin Aries retains against Falaba here. And afterwards, we have Austin Aries, Money Moose, I should say, and Killer Cross absolutely destroy these two. And this is just continuing the trend of, first it was Eddie Edwards, right? They brutalize him, put him up by the ring post, put a chair around his neck and smash him, right? Same thing last week with Johnny Impact, and now with these two. Like this trio of Aries, Money Moose, and Killer Cross is just laying waste to everybody that steps in their path. I'm not sure what their long-term future is. I don't know how long this whole thing will go, but Jesus Christ, the visual of them essentially hanging KM with a chair and smashing him in the face with it is just the visual impact alone of that is impressive.
Yeah, that angle is always, it always gets over. And by the way, a little tidbit about this, I like the way they use KM also on the show. So even though he was not the main star of the evening, he was next to the star of the evening, and he looked good, and he looked on part in the main event. Also, most likely he's gonna get a good spot at Bound for Glory, since he's already mixed with Killer Cross and Moose and Austin Aries. So that's good for KM.
To me, he's one of these guys who just, with the old regime, he was there, but he wasn't. You know what I mean? Like he was Sienna's cousin, is what it was. And now you're really seeing him come into his own, be given a more defined role and something to actually sink his teeth into. And hats off to him, because the more I see him, the more comfortable he looks, the better he looks. Just everything about him is just, now you're really, and you see it too when they come out and the crowd is behind him. Like before, and I'm talking like 2017, he'd come out to crickets. Now he comes out and it's like people are like, yeah, fucking right, Cam is here, right? It's such a dramatic shift, but it's well deserved because he's working his ass off for this gimmick.
Yeah, and he have been working in wrestling for quite a while. Have been, getting his time in wrestling. So he, even though he's new to the Impact Wrestling talent, he have been in wrestling for quite a while. So he knows a thing or two about wrestling, and he have been finally given the spotlight to shine. And hopefully he's able to get a match at Bound for Glory. I would love to see him, even if it's a tag team match, him and Eddie Edwards versus Moose and Killer Cross. By the way, I gotta ask you this, Taxman, and please answer this one, alright? What are your thoughts on the chemistry between Austin Aries, Moose, and Killer Cross?
To me, and I kind of got into this last week with Mike, was like, I didn't really understand. Okay, I'm gonna fumble over myself a little bit here, because for me, the way that they revealed this was like, I don't know, it was missing something somehow. Like I understand turning Moose heel because he's there. He's a babyface, but he's not, right? He always seemed to be missing something with the fans. Now he's in this faction. I'm not sure how much traction he personally will get out of this. To me, I'm looking at this trio, and I just see Star on Killer Cross. Like, every time I see him, he looks so fucking cool and calm and collected with these two. Like, to me, he just seems like if anybody's going to really come out on top of this whole trio, it's going to be him. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but that's kind of what I see. And as far as the chemistry, again, I'm waiting to see where Moose takes his character. I want to see if he's really going to embrace this whole, doing the whole baller thing, or if he's going to kind of take a backseat to Austin Aries and Killer Cross, or if again he's gonna kind of just be there rather than being a focal point. I want to see what he specifically does in this group. I think that is going to go a lot more towards their chemistry rather than, them just destroying people week in and week out, because eventually you can only do that so often before it's like, okay, like, we get it. These guys are powerhouses. What else are they going to give us?
Yeah. I get your thoughts. By the way, am I the only one that thought at the very early, beginning of this show that KM was turning heel, since you saw like they were having like the first promo with Austin Aries and Moose on one side of the furniture, and then you have Killer Cross and then an open spot. Did you thought that for a second, or I was only wondering all along? That was my creativity running wild.
I gave it like a half thought, and I was like, I hope not, because it doesn't make sense. Then it makes sense in terms of like, now you have 4 huge guys with Austin Aries, but it doesn't make sense in the fact of, okay, you finally have invested enough time and energy into Falaba and KM. Now they're finally over. It would be too early for me to pull that plug. But yeah, I did notice it, and I was like, and they didn't, obviously, and I'm thankful for it. But yeah, I did have that same observation very briefly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our matches for the card this week. I want to cover a couple of things with you that popped up in the news this past week. So one of them we kind of touched on already. We're going to touch on a little bit more, is the tapings in Mexico. Now, from what you understand, are these tapings running from this next week's Impact all the way up to Bound for Glory, or is there a set in between?
I think there's a set in between. What I read was 2 episodes of Impact Wrestling. That will be let's say the 30, give me a second, 20 and the 27.
Okay.
And Bound for Glory is October 4, right?
Yes.
Yeah, October 4? No.
Wait, no. Sorry.
7.
Bound for Glory will be... Yeah, I think you're right. This is 7th, but... yeah, I was curious if there's... Because if they're only running 2 episodes out of this...
No. They're running 2 episodes, and there's another set of tapings because the Bound for Glory is October 14. At least from the episodes that I read, it was like 2 weeks.
Okay, so but the other set of tapings will still be in Mexico, I guess?
I'm not sure. Unless they're gonna put a lot of like backstage stuff in order to make those hours seems longer. I'm not sure, or that they might use some footage from the indies or other promotions. So I'm not sure, but the way that the spoilers look, it looks like 2 weeks set of tapings.
Okay.
Like 8 matches, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I always get. I'm always interested to see, because now you're starting to see them tape less in advance.
Yes.
Which like, thank God, because when they're taping like 2. Well, not that they have done that in a while, but when they were taping 2 months at a time, you can tell at the end of that 2 months that the crowd is just fucking done. Like, even in this episode, the crowd was pretty good, but you can tell that it's at the tail end of tapings. Like, there's so much product and content that they've watched in 2 days. It's like, it's almost impossible to maintain the same level of energy. And you got to think, too, this is almost the same crowd that was there for the first set of tapings, which was directly after Slammiversary. So they've seen a lot of fucking wrestling in a very short amount of time.
Yeah. And by the way, during the good old days, the heyday of Impact Wrestling, they used to record like that. 1 week it was live, and the other was pre-recorded. That's it. Why? Because if you have an angle that went sideways, you can fix it in 2 weeks. It's not like today, or if anything went wrong, it doesn't get over. It is harder for you to fix that if you have a whole month already in the can.
Yeah, and especially if somebody picks up a charge and then all of a sudden has to drop their title, like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that happened before, then you're fucked, right? Because you have how many months of footage still to run through before you can correct that kind of error. So,
or if they jump ship to the Money Pit NXT, you can have that talent over there still being featured on your program, and they are already on Florida.
And that happened. Well, okay, so that's happened a few times because EC3 was one, right?
Yeah.
And then they had, wasn't Galloway one as well?
Yeah, Galloway jumped ship and Lashley.
Yeah, that's Lashley right. Yeah, because he was still featured. He was running that angle. Actually, they had the 1 week he was on Raw, and then Thursday was the Brian Cage Lashley match.
Yeah, the last one.
Yeah. So, yeah, just anything to shorten up the tapings, I think, is just better in the long run for them. In terms of everything, keeping it fresh, keeping the crowd energized, and limiting spoilers, because Lord knows you and I personally, we hate the spoilers, but so yeah, some people just can't get enough of that shit. I never understand why.
Yeah, it is. I feel like it is like a catch-22, right? Because first, especially as a content creator, right? You could either ignore the spoilers and not talk about them, make no mentions of them, and let people who might not have the best interest of Impact Wrestling and Impact Wrestling fans at heart being the owners of that topic. Or you could try to cover the spoilers, but also you will piss off a lot of Impact Wrestling fans. So that is like, damn if you do, and damn if you don't. I don't usually cover spoilers, but I do talk about them like very vague. Like I do like a little teasings and stuff like that, but I don't go balls in unless something, actually gets leaked out and you have a bad narrative over there, and therefore I must debunk that. Let me give you an example. Do you remember a couple of months that Matt Sydal, he gave the grand title to Josh Matthews, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But he gave that like a gift, like a prof, right? He didn't give that like a legit title, right? But you have, very honest people like Brian Satin, putting the news out there. Oh my God, Josh Matthews is the new grand title, and you have all the other pirates. Oh my God, Impact Wrestling is putting the title on Josh Matthews.
Yeah.
Just like WCW put the title on David Arquette. It is, very dishonest type of stuff. When that type of stuff happens, I think that it is the responsible thing to go out there and debunk that falsehood. But unless something as that happen, I don't, usually talk about spoilers. What are your thoughts on spoilers in general, Taxman?
To me, I don't want to know the results from every show. I just don't. I want to be able to sit back and enjoy watching the show as a fan first off, and then obviously the podcast is secondary. But I would rather, if there's something that needs, and I'm kind of in the same boat as you, if there's something that needs to be debunked, then yeah, I'm all for it. Because this happened this past week actually. Prime example is you had, I don't even remember who broke the news, that Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix had all of a sudden mysteriously signed contracts with WWE, and that was like heavily in the news until Pentagon himself was at, I don't remember what the promotion was, but he came out, because he's their champ, and he came out and effectively said, I'm not going anywhere, I'm your champ, I'm here for the long haul, which like obviously shot the WWE rumors down right there. But it's crazy how quickly all of this speculation, if you will, can get out of hand real quick. Unfortunately, yeah, there are a time and place for spoilers to be used advantageously for the company, such as something like that, to be able to get ahead of like you just said, the Josh Matthews, Matt Sydal angle. You need to be able to get ahead of that before a lot of this, LOL TNA bullshit fucking starts, because that's exactly what's gonna fucking happen. Like it always happens like that. That's like I made the point last week in my conversation with Mike about how Johnny Impact just essentially signed his own main event for Bound for Glory, and I had made the point of like, you're gonna have all these idiots that don't watch a lick of Impact at all, but they'll be the first ones to go, oh, look at fucking Impact, they just make championship matches on the fly and this show makes no fucking sense and whatever, because all they do is selectively look at one thing, right? They disregard the entire fucking crux of the show. Like, it doesn't matter that this show has been fucking lights out tremendous since January or February when this new regime took over. It doesn't matter about that. All that matters is that there's this one little thing that they can pick up and go LOL TNA and make a fucking hashtag and be a fucking hero and get 30 likes from their 17 followers and 4 retweets that got it. Like, it's like, get the fuck out of here. Who the fuck are you? You're fucking nobody. Sit the fuck down. It's frustrating.
They're very dishonest, and they know they're telling half a truth. And there's a couple of people, even podcasters. I'm not gonna be naming non angry marks or anything like that. But there's people that are like that. They took the stuff out of context in order for them to feel good about themselves by trashing Impact Wrestling or trashing this or that other promotion. And I get it. I didn't like that Johnny Impact announcement. I was saying during my review of the show, I was saying, hey, this is like basically, instead of you putting the horse in front of the carousel, whatever it's called, you put it the other way around. First, you announce the match, and then you announce the reason, why this is getting, personal stuff. No, I don't like that. I'd rather have them beat, Johnny Impact up, and then management will say, Johnny Impact, since you have been wrong, now you got a chance to make things right by taking the title away from Austin Aries at Bound for Glory. That would be a lot better, but I'm not the booker. I don't work over there. I don't have, I don't want to work over there, even though, believe it or not, I'm not interested in, working for them. I'm just a fan. I just want to stay being a fan.
By the way, on and off topic, if you're a podcaster talking shit, come talk shit about my show, because I'll fucking clap back on you real quick and we'll get something going, but I just wanted to drop that on there. And you fucking know I would too, Robert. Like, there's no hold barred on my goddamn show, I'll tell you that, boy. But so, speaking about clapping back on a couple of things, it came out in the news this week that Matt Hardy, of all people, had voiced his... Yeah, I knew you were going to fucking love this one. So Matt Hardy came out in the news saying that he would look favorably upon going back to either Ring of Honor or I should say Impact Wrestling, and this was this was a firestorm. So I got a lot to say about it myself. I kind of know what your thoughts are, but I want to hear, or maybe if people didn't catch what you said on Twitter, kind of your thoughts on that situation.
Yeah, I find it extremely funny. Why? Because Matt Hardy had take advantage of a lot of people by lying by omission. Basically, most of the stuff he was saying on Twitter when it comes down to the creation of the broken, gimmick, it was not true. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe me. Go up, open up another tab, right? You're gonna go to your Google, right? And go and put like creation of the broken gimmick, and you will see, you will hear straight from the horse's mouth. You will hear Jeremy Borras saying, "No, yo, I am the one actually behind this, broken gimmick," and you will hear him, long. I'm telling, almost like 9 months before Jeff Hardy decided to leave Impact Wrestling. So first thing first, that was a total 100% bullshit. His claim was bullshit. And on top of that, Matt Hardy, he was very, dishonest, especially when it comes down to, Impact Wrestling. Let me give you even the source of what I was talking about. You are gonna go to your Twitter page and you wanna type this one, creative behind broken Matt Hardy gimmick, and you will find a video from October 14, 2016, and you will hear Jeremy Borash saying, "Hey, I am the brains behind this whole operation." So that was a lie. The other thing that was a lie was Reby Hardy, another, a very special person over there.
A very diversive person, we'll say.
Implying, not saying, but implying that Impact Wrestling was, guilty of child labor. And she put it like this way: "Hey, you TNA, you should be looking out for child labor laws, because you might be, breaking them by putting my child with me on your television show." And I was like, yo, that is a line, and no one should cross.
That's a federal crime almost.
They're accusing people of a crime that if anyone would do that, they will go straight up to jail. But yeah, you throw that over there on Twitter, you get the pirates retweeting that, the bound for bankruptcy, Jeff Jarrett, he's a con man or whatever, blah 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 blah. It is all bullshit. And after all the trash he talked about, after all the trash Reby talk, now Jeff Hardy saying no, Matt Hardy saying no, I'm looking favorable to one day be back on Impact Wrestling. I had a good run over there, and some of you fans, you miss me, so I want to go and return. Forget about the past. No, really, we're gonna forget about the past. It is all bullshit, and I don't want to hear anything about him coming. And I know there's people who will say, no, but the broken gimmick was good. Yeah, it was good 2 years ago. Time has passed by. It was a gimmick that was one in a lifetime. That's it. Times have changed. It is time to move on. Good, as simple as that. What are your thoughts on this? I don't want to get more pissed off.
So I look at it two ways. So first part kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about Impact lacking star power. Now, I don't agree that you should bring back a guy like Matt Hardy because he has a name. While he has a name, albeit it's not exactly mainstream, he has the notoriety with the broken gimmick. Yeah, that was, like you said, it was good 2 years ago. What have you done for me lately, right? Nothing. Yeah. So to bring him back because he's a name just it automatically puts me in the mindset of like they're fucking doing the same thing again of oh, this guy's available, better sign him, rather than okay, let's get a good locker room of talent and let's build these guys up, rather than throw a bunch of money at some guy who, quite frankly, is not going to contribute anything. And regardless of how good the broken gimmick was, and that can be argued, any way you slice it, till everybody's blue in the face, bro, as somebody would say. The fact of the matter is, it did not move the needle as much as everybody thinks it did, and that's just simply stating the facts.
They were able to pop a rating once, but after that, the Jeff Jarrett, when he was, cool in his head, he didn't have any problem with alcohol. They basically outdone every single rating outside of the big final deletion one. Outside of that, Impact have done better ratings. That is the only one that they have been able to beat.
Yeah. So
keep talking. Yeah.
I feel like it got the one big and fantastic that it did, but everybody fails to realize, okay, this thing had to have a shelf life, right? Like, this is not a thing that could have gone on for 10 years. It can't. Like, a gimmick like this, it's one of these things that can go, 2 years maximum. And you see it now, right? Because where is he now? And almost immediately when they got to WWE, I know that he couldn't do the delete thing, whatever the fuck, it doesn't matter. The fact is, when he got there, they butchered it, which effectively killed it off, but it had no steam anyways. And I use this term loosely, internet fanboys, who were all about the gimmick in Impact, were the same ones going, well, this is fucking awful in WWE, and they burying him there. But now these are the same ones who are saying, oh yeah, come back, because, what the fuck? What the actual fuck? It doesn't make any sense. If you didn't like it over there because you thought it was stale, why would you think that it would be a good idea to bring it back here, bring this stale concept back? It completely defeats what they're doing. To me, it doesn't make any sense to bring back somebody just for a nostalgia act, because that's not the direction that this company has been going in the last several months. It's completely against the grain. Now, my second point about this that I wanted to make was, and I'm going to get into a little bit of the mudslinging, because it was not good. It wasn't a good look for anybody, but especially for Impact, and because now we know, and I use that term loosely as well, that a lot of the whole lawsuit litigation problems were caused by Jeff Jarrett not wanting them to have whatever. So you had the new regime come in, right? Should have been a clean slate, you would think, when Don Callis and Scott D'Amore officially took power in January and then had their first set of tapings in February. But What did you see in January? You saw the same diatribe fucking nonsense bullshit being spewed by Rebby and Matt towards this new iteration of the ownership of the company. These people had nothing to do with what happened to them. Nothing at all, right? But still, they're lumped in with the whole shitstorm that was happening at the time. You still have them taking shots on Twitter constantly. You still have them saying all this negative bullshit when they didn't have to. They're off in the big leagues, as they call it.
Yeah.
There was no reason for them to keep dragging this out, but they made a choice to continually drag this thing out. So it's on them now, in my opinion, that they should suffer the consequences. You can't just come back and insert yourself because, I made a lot of money there and I think I can make a lot of money again. Yeah, you made a fucking lot of money there because there was nobody else there. When they were there doing the broken thing, who the fuck else was there? EC3, debatable, let's be honest. Lashley was not doing much then. He didn't do much until the American Top Team guys came in my opinion. They were doing the broken gimmick when it was a dead zone. So if you're telling me that oh yeah, we made a lot of money during this fucking dead period, and like, what the fuck?
Not even. And by the way, I'm gonna go both in. I know some people are not, happy with the person at this time, and I'm gonna name him. Is Jeff Jarrett, right? But I'm gonna tell you what I think, the 100% what I think. Of course, when you are doing stuff like, alcohol, right? You are the owner of your life, but there's, outside influence that puts you towards that. And I am of the belief that Rebby and Matt Hardy and the dirt cheats who keep repeating that lies that he was telling him are partly responsible for why Jeff Jarrett ended up, ending in alcoholism, and that got me very pissed off. And I'm gonna shoot 100% straight with you.
Which I appreciate, by the way. You shoot hard, bro. Go for it.
I'm gonna tell you the honest truth. When I returned from my first deployment, right? Everybody knows that I've been in the military for 10 years. When I returned from, my first deployment, I had
Robert,
a hard time. Yeah.
Can I pause you for 1 second?
Yeah.
Sorry, my kid is one of my kids is crying. I'll be right back. Sorry, bro.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, sorry everyone. I had to go read the SmackDown spoilers to my 8-month-old. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you the truth. When I returned from my first deployment, right? I was, playing a lot with alcohol, and I was on the highway to hell to becoming an alcoholic, and it was due to that shock of returning, home and seeing a lot of things change, and you'll have the same, way of working hard, balls to the walls, but you see the place is not gonna help you to go away, and you try to hide, right? And I totally saw it with Jeff Jarrett, but I didn't know what I was watching. And everybody who was Impact fan should remember this. Do you remember when Jeff Jarrett was around, and you will see that he will wake up very early on, and he will put like he was running and doing some stuff on the treadmill, and then a couple of hours later he was meeting this person on this place, and then a couple of days he was doing another stuff on another country. He was trying to, fixing the way he was seeing things with work, but that did not work, obviously. But obviously, when you have someone who is having that type of problems, and on top of that, he gets on the internet, right? And you get on Twitter to interact with your fans, and all you see is every day is oh, Jeff Jarrett, you're a carny, you're a screwy, Rebby, she's such an angel, you're screwing Matt Hardy, and you're doing child labor, and that type of stuff. It is, you're pushing that guy, you're pushing him to the limit. It kind of pissed me off. The dirt cheats, the same dirt cheats who were repeating without any sort of filter all the stuff Rebby and Matt Hardy were saying about Jeff Jarrett. A couple of months then later on was say, oh my God, Jeff Jarrett, pray for Jeff Jarrett so he can overcome alcoholism. Yeah, right. After you help, you might have not been the primary, reason why he ended up being an alcoholic for a couple of months, but sure as hell you were pushing for that direction by your narrative and your constant every single day something very negative about Jeff Jarrett and Impact Wrestling, and you're a horrible person, and you're a con man and abusive. Hell no, and it pissed me off a lot. It pissed me the fuck off.
So
I'm gonna talk about that. Go ahead, Taxman. Try to make sense out of all the things that I talk about.
Well, no, and you bring up a valid point too, right? Like, Jeff Jarrett was at one point in time was extremely valuable. Like, he essentially started the company with his dad, Like, everybody kind of forgets that part of it. And yeah, like a couple of weeks ago, I did go pretty hard on him in one of my podcasts, but I made a specific point to not bring up the alcohol related portions of it, right? Because I don't, yes, obviously, you kind of control your own destiny with alcohol, whether or not you agree that it's a mental disease or not. It's not for me to argue right now, but what I am saying is that you kind of make your own choice a little bit to some degree.
Yeah.
So that's why when I said my spiel about him a couple of weeks ago, I made sure to leave that part out because I didn't want to open up that can of worms. I wanted it to be specifically about Impact Wrestling, the company, not Jeff Jarrett, the person or personality.
Yeah, that's the difference.
But I feel like people can't separate the two.
When Reby was attacking him and Matt were attacking him, it was personal stuff. It was not. I don't know if you remember. Even Reby Hardy was like saying like, "Oh, I got the information that you got like what is called when you get caught drunk."
Yeah,
driving.
DUI. She released his DUI papers actually on Twitter. Is what it was.
Tell me now that she did not help him get into alcoholism. Yeah, right. You know, I have zero respect for Matt Hardy, zero respect for Reby Hardy. I don't wish them any harm, but I don't wish to ever see them again on a television screen, especially on Impact Wrestling. I wish them, they could, earn the lottery and they could move to a isolated island or something like that. So I can never... they could be millionaires over there and, have a lot of fun with their life. But I don't want to see them, ever on my TV screen, and the type of stuff they were saying, that went too far, and I get it. Jeff Jarrett is not an angel by any stretch of the imagination, but I have a lot of respect for the man. Even the how can you say, the partnership with AAA, who did that? Jeff Jarrett, the first team when he show up and return, boom, he get that done. He get the one done with Noah. He got the one done with Crash. Of course, he set the other regime, Don Callis and Scott D'Amore for success. Yeah, they set them for success, and that's good. So from now on, obviously, is the regime of Don Callis and what is the name? Scott D'Amore. But Jarrett, he was not perfect, but at least he set them for success. But as for Matt Hardy and Reby, now after all the trash that they talk about Impact Wrestling, that they wanted to return, it is insane. And I have zero respect for any of them. I don't want to see them on my TV.
So obviously we've covered kind of the personal side of it. I'll just quickly mention professionally, and I tweeted this out, and I know you caught it I tweeted it at you, I think, actually, that, like, I don't think he could keep up with what they're doing right now. Like physically, I don't think he could keep up. But not only that, just, he would come back for what? He's obviously, you can't use him to get anybody over. You can't use him as a managerial role. You can't use him as a backstage producer. You just, like, to be perfectly blunt, there is no use in this version of Impact Wrestling for Matt Hardy. That's just the cold, simple truth of it all.
Yeah, and on top of that, Jeff Hardy was very tight with Jeff Jarrett. They were friends for a longest time. And of course, that type of commentary and behavior against Jeff Jarrett, of course, that is gonna cast some rift between Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy and Jeff Jarrett and Jeff Hardy. So they didn't have to do that, especially on public, especially on Twitter. So therefore, he's not fit for a managerial role. of course. He is now saying that he's gonna be a producer and stuff like that. Would you trust your production to be headed by someone like Matt Hardy, who, if he is not happy with anything on the production, he's gonna start accusing you of child labor and shit on Twitter, and his wife is gonna accuse you of that she is gonna publish the private information of a DUI as a way to pawn you, to own you. Now, of course not. I'm not gonna trust that guy to even, sell me a fucking Hot Wheel. I'm not gonna hand him anything. Hell no. No, the guy is insane. I think he should, win the lottery next week and move to the isolated island. That is my wishes to Matt Hardy and Revy Hardy.
So I think we're both in agreement, anyways, of that we would rather not see Matt return in any capacity, way, shape, or form to Impact Wrestling.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else in the news that you want to touch on?
The other thing was, I don't know if you see the Hell in a Cell that is gonna.
Oh God, yeah, I saw that shit. And then so if anybody is behind on this. The Hell in a Cell apparently is red this year, so the GWN Twitter trolled it, saying this looks vaguely familiar or something along those lines, and they had put up the was that Full Metal Mayhem?
The Steel Asylum.
Oh, Steel Asylum, yeah. So they put up that picture, and then right away there's all the dummies coming out of the woodwork. Did you read some of those comments? Oh my God, I'm wondering like. Okay, first off, Twitter is a fantastic litmus test for if you can spell beyond the 4th grade level, first off. Second off, if you're coherent enough to perform tasks of a 1st grader. And third off, if you have the intelligence of a kindergartner. Because I'm reading some of this shit and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you people are trolling yourselves. It's ridiculous.
It is like, when you're not a non-wrestling fan, right, and you hear when people are referring to wrestling fans, they say, oh, those, toothless, like rednecks, they live in a trailer park. Yeah, those are the people who were tweeting at Impact Wrestling.
Oh, 100%. They fucking dragged the swamp for those ones. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Impact Wrestling fans, at least they're a lot better. I find them as the smarter fans. They're smarter fans, and not into smart or anything like that, but actually more, more high IQ than the other side of town. And you can see, with the litmus test of Twitter.
Yeah, oh yeah. Speaking of which, do you follow Death Spray, by the way?
No.
Okay, so you go follow that guy. That guy was on fire this past week. Just I'll shoot you a couple of gems. That guy was on fire, but
he's like the black guy from like Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, and he fucking loves Impact. Yeah, he just shreds every troll, like just annihilates them. So,
yeah, I know who that guy is.
Okay, yeah, no, he had some bangers this week. I'm like, woo! he's just letting him go is awesome. But yeah, I had a lot of fun. All right, before we get out of here for the evening, is there any projects you got coming up?
Yeah, the next stuff that I'm doing is the top things. I'm working on different type of top 10 best matches out of Impact Wrestling Talent. This Monday is gonna be the one for Austin Aries, so I'm looking forward to recording that. That's gonna be a fun video to watch. And if you are new to Impact Wrestling, you could have a good material so you can research that on WGN and get to see his best matches on Impact Wrestling. Also, I'm gonna be doing more of that stuff. Even some of that stuff with a person from Canada, Knock Knock Wig Win, about a Canadian wrestler, Knock Knock Wig Win. So you got the idea, right? And the other thing that I'm doing is the Impact Bodega podcast. That is my Latino-based podcast with Jorge and Chef, and also my big show, Robert Does Wrestling on YouTube. I'm doing basically just Impact Wrestling reviews for the time being and the top things. I haven't do anything when it comes down to playing guitar since I have my guitar getting fixed, getting some upgrade. But soon I will be also playing a couple of the things that I like about Impact Wrestling when I have a little bit of time to record them, because I'm not the best music producer, believe it or not. So I got a couple of hats that I'm wearing, but I'm proud of all the stuff that I'm doing as a Impact Wrestling fan. And also the other kind of this is kind of not, I cannot say with 100% like accuracy, but I'm gonna be working with a indie promotion in the island, and I'm gonna do a couple of interviews with some of the talent, and some of the talent it is related to Impact Wrestling. So I will let you know when the time is right and everything is written in paper, but it looks like it is gonna happen at this early December, I think at the middle of December. So let's see how it goes.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to those. If anybody's gonna get a killer interview, it's gonna be you, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
And if they want to follow you on Twitter, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me at Wrestling Robber, the same as with Instagram. I usually post much on that. I mostly use Twitter, and I'm not gonna be spamming you or anything like that, so I take it up, easy on the Twitter, and on obviously YouTube.com, Robert Does Wrestling, and I have a couple of cool videos coming up on my channel.
Looking forward to everything coming out in the future. Make sure you go on Robert's YouTube page, hit that subscribe button, and hit that follow button on Twitter as well. Thanks you very much for joining me tonight, Robert. It was a pleasure as always, and we will definitely be chopping it up again in the future.
Yeah, in the very near future. So
yeah, I don't know any. I'm just saying, I'm a Canadian guy who may or may not have a Canadian flag, who may or may not do a project with you on a Canadian wrestler. We'll see how it goes.
So yeah, in the near future. So thank you a lot, Taxman, for having me on.
You got it, Robert. Anytime. Boom. Now, just before I wrap up for this evening, once again, thank you to Robert for joining me this evening. Just a couple of things I want to touch on. Once again, if you haven't already, please subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/c/six-sided podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, know that you can also direct download or stream this podcast on anywhere that you really steal, subscribe, barter, trade, whatever you want to say, your favorite podcast. That would be iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Once again, just type it in, Six-Sided Podcast, and as well, you'll see the Audio Boom link. The RSS feed will be on there with the first tweet for this show specifically. Speaking of tweet, you can follow us on Twitter at 6_podcast. And if you ever want to be a part of the show, obviously you're more than welcome. If you haven't been able to tell, especially the past few weeks, I love to just have guests on the show. It doesn't matter if you want to review the whole show. Maybe you just want to come on and say a few words about a certain subject that's bothering you or whatever, or maybe it's something you have a really great idea and you want to get it out there, or hey, maybe you just want to shoot the shit and whatever. Who cares, right? Get in touch with me. Hit me up on Twitter, like I said, at 6_podcast. You can email me at any time, sixsidepod@gmail.com. That's all letters, no numbers or gimmicks in that one. And like I said, make sure you subscribe on the YouTube page. Make sure to give us a rate and review on iTunes or any of the other streaming or downloadable platforms, because it really means a lot to me. And it helps me to improve. If I know that there's something you guys want to see, then obviously I'm going to be able to use these tools to better direct the program, if you will. As well, make sure you're keeping up with TNA Impact in Reverse. So far, I am up to 6 episodes. We've already covered Kevin Nash, Taryn Terrell, Christopher Daniels, Tara, Brooke Tessmacher, and Generation Me. So if you haven't checked those out, make sure you do. TNA Impact in Reverse. It's a hell of a project. I'm really enjoying doing it, and it's a lot of eye-opening in terms of things that I didn't realize. Sometimes you just get so lost in watching a program for X amount of years, you kind of forget things, or maybe things at the time flew over your head a little bit, or maybe you didn't appreciate things that happened at the time. But anyways, it's given me a little bit more of a appreciation for some of the great things that have happened in Impact Wrestling's past. So once again, want to check that one out. TNA Impact in Reverse. I had a great suggestion actually from Robert that I will be covering in the next coming week's episode, so definitely want to keep it locked for that. So for myself, for my guest Robert from Robert Does Wrestling, for our host website wrestlingwithwrestling.com, and as well for good friends of mine, thedailysmark.com, want to check them out as well. I am the Taxman saying take care of yourselves and each other. Good night, everyone.